Hey guys, Brett Alegre-Wood here, author of the 3+1 Plan and chairman of YPC Group, where we help people just like you to build a thriving property portfolio so you can live the lifestyle you've always dreamed of, but in such a way that you don't have to take a second job or work yourself into an early grave. I've been thinking a lot about the thing that I want to talk to you about today, and it's really about leadership. And one of the things I'm noticing that is just totally missing in the industry and actually in the economy right now is some really solid leadership. And I'll just talk for a minute. I'll step off that subject, but look, recovery is one of those things where I've always been told from day dot in property investment and from day dot in economics that if you want to get out of a recession, you want to get into a recovery and actually embed that recovery and get back to a normal cycle, one of the best ways to do that is through property development, okay? Is through building new buildings. And I'll explain why. If you're going to build a new house, you're going to need a plumber, a carpenter, a bricklayer, and a whole heap of other trades, and those trades are now earning money. Now, if they're earning money, they're then spending money at shops, they're going to schools, they're going out to dinners, they're doing, and what that does is it starts to move the whole economy. By doing new build, it's creating new blood in the economy, it's creating new, effectively, places to live, it creates, fixes the supply, any supply issues. And what it does is that new money, or that money that's seeping into the new build, actually then rolls through the whole economy, okay? Now, to be fair, what happens with the government is most of it, they may invest it, but then it will come back to them in the form of tax, obviously, because people are spending. So I've always been told that that's the case, and if you want to get the economy moving, then you stimulate the building industry. If you want to slow it down, then what you do is you destimulate it, if you like. Now, if you think about it, what the Bank of England does, if it wants to slow the economy down, what does it do? It raises interest rates, yeah? And interest rates is its primary function, or its primary thing that it uses. It can also use quantitative easing, which is a separate thing. But for the most part, it uses interest rates. So it raises interest rates when it wants to slow the economy, lowers interest rates when it wants to stimulate the economy. Now, all that does is that creates more interest in property or less interest in property, and the whole cycle works again. Now, the problem that I see right now is for some stupid reason, and part of the stupid reason is there's absolutely no leadership from any group, and we're talking about the Council of Mortgage Lenders, we're talking about the FSA, we're talking about the Home Builders Federation, we're talking about the banks, the government, Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, we're talking about property clubs, we're talking about all these people. Nobody's taking leadership. Nobody's actually looking out for the interests of the whole economy, all right? What they're doing, okay, is all looking after their own interests. They're not talking to each other, they're not coordinating, they're not actually getting the economy back on its feet, which they should be. And that's quite a disappointing thing. We've got all these big associations that represent, hundreds of different people, hundreds of different organisations that could actually, get together and actually almost, decide, right, new build is what we want. Instead, what's happening with new build is that it's just getting trashed and rubbish. Loan to values are lower than, second-hand stock. All these sort of things. A lot of the things that were endemic in the previous economy, and when I talk about the previous economy, the pre-drop, have gone away. Now some still stay, but what's actually happening here is that effectively, the very thing that could save us and that could get us out and really get things moving is being rubbished, is being trashed, is being, acted or treated like a second-rate citizen. And part of that, is the reason why it's taking so long to come out. Nobody's prepared to step up and take leadership. Certainly not our political leaders. We've got so many things happening in this industry which is just counterproductive to growth and counterproductive to getting back to a normal cycle. We've got valuers that are more concerned about being sued than they are about giving an accurate measure and valuation of what a property is worth. Now, we can blame them for that, but actually we're all to blame, all right? As a culture, we've got into this, and banks, what they do is if somebody gets repossessed, the first place they look at who they can blame is the surveyor. And what that's meant is the surveyors have to be more cautious. So therefore what happens is we're getting radical valuations. It used to be the case where I could say that if I sent a surveyor out and I paid for a surveyor whether it be for mortgage purposes or for my own, I know it was a plus or minus 5% valuation. In other words, it didn't matter how many values I sent out, within plus or minus 5%, they would all be around the same figure. All right? And that was before we had masses of data on the internet and all this sort of thing. Now we can get 30, 40% differences. All right? It all depends on the flavour of the day, how well they know the area, their PI cover, a whole range of things. That's one aspect. We've got the banks. Now the banks, realistically, what's happening is there's no competition there. If we look at what the FSA coming out and they're saying, actually, we're going to make it very stringent and lending very hard to come by. Now the issue with that is it just makes it hard for everyone, and everyone has to act in that way. And because the FSAs are coming out and saying this is the rules, they're not taking any leadership. All right, what they're doing is saying, well, maybe we'll interpret this way, maybe we'll interpret that way. So it's left up to the industry to hopefully determine. But what most of them are doing right now is they're running scared. And what that running scared means is that you and I and everyone in the economy is sitting there going, what's happening, guys? These are supposed to be our leaders. They're supposed to be people that actually represent major, influences in the industry, and yet they're doing nothing. They're being nothing. They're being wet rags. And it really, well, the reason I'm writing this video or doing this video is because, it pisses me off, excuse the French, that nobody does. So come on, guys, we need somebody who's going to stand up and say, hey, we need to start doing this. We need to start taking note. This is a serious thing in the economy, and we need to get back into recovery and back into normality, all right? There's no reason for us to be in this recession like we are right now. New build is the way out of that. Let's stimulate the economy in the way that we know best how to, and that's to stimulate house building and property, Now, bottom line is, look, for us and for you listening, is this: you're not really going to be able to do anything. I mean, to be fair, am I going to be able to influence the FSA or CML? Probably not. They'll probably read this and think, who is this small fly on the wall? Nobody. And that, for the most part, as individuals, that's about the influence that we're going to have. Now, what can we do about it? Because realistically, we need to, as individuals, do something about it. We can't just let this continue to go on. And what we really need to do is get a plan. And certainly if you're watching this and you haven't got a plan, you haven't got a specific plan, with very clear strategy and very clear indication of what you're going to be achieving and when you're going to be achieving it, then you need to get that happening. And if you're not going to do it yourself, then come in, sit with the team and do it with them. Get them a plan, because actually, despite what all the lack of leadership is, the economy is recovering and things are getting back onto their natural cycle. And what that means is eventually that cycle is going to edge upways. Okay, it certainly already has in London, and it will continue to over certainly this next year. And I think by the middle of next year, that's when we're going to see some measurable differences. Now, if you're not in the market by then, you've probably missed out the first phase of growth. All right. Now, I'm not saying you've missed out forever. That will never be the case. But you've probably missed the first phase of growth. If you get a plan, and actually when you sit down and get a plan with one of our guys, you're going to realise that actually it's not a massive risk. We look at the downside risks. We look at what could happen if, for instance, property drops 30%, if you lose your job. All these things we take into account. So there's no reason why you shouldn't at least get a plan in place. Even if that plan says, I'm not going to buy anything for another 2 years. I'm not going to buy anything until there's been 10% growth back in the market. It doesn't matter. Having a specific plan, with detailed strategies and timelines and all these things will not only give you certainty, but it'll allow you to take advantage of the opportunities that are out there. So guys, look, what I can say is you're not going to be able to, as individuals, influence what's going on with the government and the CML and the FSAs and all these other monkeys, okay? And I'll call them monkeys because, they're led with no direction right now. I don't think anyone's going to step up to leadership, certainly not yet. There's no one that really has at any stage. So it's not likely to happen. And what that means, and what this always means, and what it always comes back to in every aspect of property investment, is that you are responsible. You're 100% responsible for everything you do and every decision you make. So you want to make sure you make the right decisions. And the only way you're going to do that and ensure that is if you get a plan and get it written out, and do all the right things in that direction. And then finally, the last stage of that is to take massive action, because nothing happens unless you're prepared to take some action. But guys, that's my whinge and whine for the day, I guess. And hopefully one of the guys in Power reads this and goes, actually, Brett, that's a good idea. I like what you're saying. I'm going to step up to leadership. I'm going to get these guys coordinating. We're going to get the market back on them on the railroad, if you like. But I doubt it somehow. I'm an optimist, but that's a stretch too far, I think. So instead, it comes down to you. So get in, call the team, get a plan together now. Get some real clarity around what you need to achieve. All right, guys, what I'd love you to do is write down below, write down your comments, any questions you've got, any thoughts you've got, and then what I'll do is I'll respond to them. So you've got the little Facebook boxes down the bottom, have a read in them, and then actually, by all means, add to that, please. All right, guys, have a great day and live with passion.